Hello YouTube frogs, and welcome back to another guide video, this time on Yanfei. With 1.5 just dropping a couple days ago, I've been able to get my hands on Yanfei. You probably have seen my roll video on her. But today we're going to be testing her out on C0. So it's going to be a complete guide. We're doing a different layout, trying to improve the way we do these videos to not waste your time too much. So let's jump right into it. My Yanfei is currently level 80, currently C0. I have her constellations right here, and her talents are level 6. So this is what we're going to be leading off with. With Yanfei, I'm going to be testing her with the 4 Crimson Witch set. And just to give you guys a little bit of background on her, she is a Catalyst DPS. She's focused on mainly charge attacks. Her Q multiplier is not that high, and her E multiplier is pretty good. So E multiplier is 237%, Q multiplier is 255%, and then her charge attack based off of these seals is anywhere between 0 seal, which is 129, 3 seal, which is 198, and 221 is available at 4 seal, which is only at Constellation 6. Her passive talent, she has Scarlet Seals. So this is between 0 to 4 Scarlet Seals, and each Scarlet Seal will increase her pyro damage bonus by 5%. This effect lasts for 6 seconds, and when a charge attack is used, these Scarlet Seals are consumed. Now, the second one, which is available at Ascension 4, which is basically when you ascend to level 70, when her charge attack deals a critical hit, she deals an additional instance of AoE pyro damage, which is equal to 80% of her attack. This is actually pretty significant, and you'll notice when we're testing that it's actually a pretty good source of damage. Pretty good synergy overall. Both of these increase her overall damage output, increase the efficiency of her playstyle. Let's take a look at her constellations really quick. When Yanfei uses her charge attack, each existing Scarlet Seal additionally reduces the stamina cost of this charge attack by 10% and increases resistance against interruption. So it's basically improving her charge attack capability, efficiency of it. At first, her Scarlet Seals drop the stamina consumption by 15% per seal, which is pretty nice. This increases it by an additional 10%, which I believe goes up to 25% stamina cost reduction. This is at 4 stacks. I mean, this is per each stack. So at 3 seals, I believe it should go down to 75%. We'll have to see when I actually use all the constellations at maybe a later video. We'll see. But moving on, C2, it increases Yanfei's charge attack crit rate by 20% against enemies below 50%. Just increases her damage output overall. C3, plus 3 levels on her E. C4 grants her a shield, which is actually pretty nice because of her playstyle. She likes to fire charge attacks a lot, and those charge attacks can't be animation canceled that easily. C5, Q plus 3 levels, and then C6 increases maximum number of Scarlet Seals by 1. If you manage to get some constellations, they're all very nice. I think that C1 is probably a pretty nice one to stop at. C2 gives her 20% crit rate. So C1, C2, both increasing her efficiency of damage output, plus 3 levels, grants her a shield, and then increases her total damage output, and then further synergizes with C1. So that is her constellations. For the weapons that we're going to be using, we have a lot. This is the highest number of 4-star books that I can achieve currently available in the game. So we have 9. We have Frostbearer, Wine and Song, Eye of Perception, Blackcliff, Mappa Mare, Solar Pearl, Sacrificial Fragments, Favonius Codex, and Witzith, all at level 80. So this is 9 4-star books that we're going to start off with. One thing that I want to note when we're doing these tests is we're going to be testing 4 sources of damage. Normal attack, which is the first auto damage, which is going to be 82%. We're going to be testing out charge attack with 3 seals. That is 198% right here. Testing out her E damage and her Q damage. So those are the 4 numbers that we're going to be looking out for. There are some books that we have here available that have Elemental Mastery on the passive stat. So in order to make this testing easier for me and also to save your time, I'm only going to be testing her without Melt and Vaporize, but we will do the calculations for you. So what that means is in the end of the video, we'll be taking into account 101 Elemental Mastery, assuming 0 EM from the substats. If this number were 0 and I gave her the Mappa Mare, then I would be gaining 101 EM. And then we'll be taking into account this number, which you will see when we actually do these tests, and we'll calculate. Cool. So that's how we're going to test it. We're going to just be doing 4 instances of damage per weapon, and then I will do the calculations, and then we will hopefully be able to have a nice graphic visualizations for all of these. And one thing to note is that since we have so many of these 4-star books, I'm going to be comparing them in groups. So what that means is Mappa Mare is going to be paired with Sacrificial Fragments. These are both of the Elemental Mastery based weapons. We're going to be comparing Solar Pearl and Blackcliff, because they are both as close as you can get to like low spending kind of books, right? So Solar Pearl's from Battle Pass, and then Blackcliff is using Star Glitter. So these two will be compared relatively side by side, and we'll be switching the mask that we have for our artifacts. Then we have these two, which is Wine and Song and Favonius Codex, which is the energy recharge ones. So the energy recharge weapons, I feel like are going to perform poorly, but I'm still going to test them out. We have Frostbearer, which is also another FTP catalyst. This one is attack percent based. So we probably will test it with versus Eye Perception because they are both attack percent based. And then Widsith is the oddball out. So Widsith is a nuke based weapon. So for my purposes of testing, I will first do one test where we have no buff from the book. And then the first buff that I get, I will try it out and see how much damage I do. We got 9 4-star weapons. And then my girlfriend's account has the 5-star weapons available for me to borrow really quick when I go onto her account. And then, so we'll be testing the damage on there. But we'll get to that when it comes through. All right. Artifacts. We are going to be using 4 Crimson Witch. This is the set of gear that I have farmed currently. Given my stats, so these are, you can take a quick peek at my stats so far. We're going to be doing attack percent, pyro damage bonus on set, and then this mask is going to be swappable. So we're going to be using a crit rate mask for most of these tests, and then we're going to be swapping to crit damage if our crit rate becomes too high. One major thing to note is that her passive talent, when she does a critical hit, she deals an additional instance of pyro damage. So 1-to-2 ratio is always going to be the most efficient, right? For overall damage DPS, 1-to-2 is great. In her particular instance, if you can't reach 1-to-2, it's better to have higher crit rate for this passive. Maximizing crit rate is actually a very valuable stat for her because she does additional damage every single time. Mop of Mirror with no crit at all. These are her stats. So she's about 120% attack, or 110%-ish. 64 crit, 140.9 crit damage, and 111 recharge with 79.6 pyro damage bonus. 6k, 7.8k, 7.5k. Auto 2.4, 5.4, 2.2, 7, 6.6. All right, so for the next set of weapons, let's test out Solar Pearl and Blackcliff. The only sad thing about the Solar Pearl is that it does not boost charge attack damage, which would have been really nice. But at the very minimum, we do have crit rate substat on this weapon. So if we switch over to the Solar Pearl, we're looking at 1.4k attack, looking at 89 crit rate and 140 crit damage. So if I were to switch this over to a crit damage mask, I would still be maintaining 71 crit rate and 174 crit damage. So I'm going to use this set of gear because I want it to be fair when comparing against the Blackcliff. So with Solar Pearl, we're going to be using a crit damage mask. So it's going to be 71 crit rate and 174 crit damage. This still maintains 1.4k attack. Testing out the Solar Pearl, I want to make sure that we understand the passive. Normal attacks will increase the elemental skill and elemental burst damage by 20%, and the elemental skill or burst hits will increase normal attack damage by 20%. With Solar Pearl being a little bit complicated, we're going to average out the E damage there. So we did 8 to 8.9, depending on how many stacks we had. So we're going to do that to 8.5, and the charge attack damage was about 6.5. The Q was about 9.2 and the auto was 2.7. With the Blackcliff, we're going to be switching from the crit damage mask back to the crit chance mask. And this is what our stats look like. So we have an immensely higher amount of crit damage with the crit rate still being at 64. Our attack is at 1.4k. 6.9. 8.6. 9.3. 2.8. Alrighty. So we just took a look at the Blackcliff Agate versus the Solar Pearl. They're relatively the same damage. Blackcliff ekes out a little bit on top, and that is even with a zero stack passive. And mostly the reason is because the crit damage is a little bit higher, so it's a less crit rate build, slightly more damage. And also Solar Pearl does not increase charge attack damage here, which is a little bit of a loss for Solar Pearl, but it's still a fairly solid stat stick weapon. Now, moving on, let's test out the Frostbearer. So, with the Frostbearer, we go up to 1.7k attack almost, maintaining 64 crit, 140 crit damage, and 79.6 pyro. Alright, so it turns out that with the attack percent increase here, it actually rounds up my stats relatively evenly for the attack versus the crit damage. So, we're going to move on to Eye Perception. 6.6. about 2.4. E damage still did not crit. Get rid of the seals. Q is 8.9k. Eye Perception is lower base attack, but higher attack percent, and also has a bolt. And with this, we have 1.65 attack, so it's about the same. Still maintaining the same amount of crit rate and crit damage as usual, with 111 recharge and 79.6 pyro. If you guys are seeing here, you guys saw the Eye Perception procs here, so it's actually pretty significant. Those Eye Perception procs were about 15k. I think that that's a good passive amount that you guys can see is doing quite an insane amount of damage. That was Eye Perception R5. 360% attack, can crit. That is what caused the 15,000 big burst there. Recharge weapons, let's first test Felonious Codex. Nothing special about these weapons, they just give you recharge, so the damage is going to be lower. 5.9. 7.1. 7.7. And then 2.3. All right. With Wine and Song, is a high base attack weapon, still maintaining the same usual crit rate, crit damage. Now the attack percent here, it says 1.8k, but that is with the passive. That is still 7.2. 9.3. The 2.9 auto with this stuff. 8.6. Down to last 4-star weapon, Witzith, the unique one, which gives you a random buff every 30 seconds or 10 seconds when you switch the character to the field. So in this instance, I do have lower attack, but I have a very high amount of crit damage. We're going to test this out to see no Witzith boost, how much will you do? And then we can try to compare this with if we get a random buff, what on average it'll look like. If we get Elemental Mastery, you can't really tell with this test. So we'll hopefully get either attack percent or elemental bonus damage. 9.3 already. 5. 8.6. 7.2. That's accurate. Now, there's a lot of comments going to be saying that I have 2 Pyro Resonance here. Resonance only applies when you have 4 members on your team. So I do not have 2 Pyro Resonance here. Alrighty. So, what buff do we get? We got the attack percent buff. So, we got 120% attack. Let's see how much damage we do. So you can see here, R5 Witzith, 120% attack. And that caused their damage should be much higher. Even without the passive, it still does a very large amount of damage. Alright, boys. So, that wraps up the 4-star weapon tests. We did all 9 of these. I gave you guys general recommendations on my final thoughts on them. So Mappa Mare and Sacrificial Fragments are the Elemental Mastery based books. Very quickly, their damage is on the lower end of the scale, so about 7,000 on the E and the Q. But they do have Elemental Mastery, so if you're looking for some reaction-based books, these are okay. I would still recommend you run the attack-based or crit rate, crit damage ones, but these are okay if you have no other option, like if you're new to the game or something. For the other weapons, the attack percent weapons and the crit-based weapons, the Solar Pearl and the Blackcliff Agate do almost identical damage. This should be expected. They're doing about 8.59 on the E and the Q damage. And then the attack percent weapons for Frostbear and Eye of Perception are basically also equivalent. Frostbear is weaker. Eye of Perception has a very massive bolt damage, so it's also pretty solid. And then Favonius Codex and Wine and Song. Favonius Codex is probably the weaker of the bunch, and I don't actually value this too much, right? The Q is important for charge attack bonus, but doesn't actually do that much damage. Most of her damage comes from an 8 or Q. Wine and Song is actually fairly solid. With the sprinting with 40% attack with high base attack, it ekes out onto the same category as these other weapons. So with the passive activated, it does compete with these ones. It's not that bad, but this is at R5. Now, Witzith is a special weapon. So Witzith is already strong even without its passive. But with its passive, it comes out on top on even the 5-star weapons. So with the passive, I would say 50% or higher damage boost overall. 120% attack, depending on your attack, will be about 50%. Elemental damage is also a very high amount. And then Elemental Mastery should increase your massive amount of Vaporize and melt damage. So those are the 4-star weapons wrapped up. Alright, boys, I'm back with the 5-star weapons. This time I'm on my girlfriend's account, twitch.tv/Psycho. I'll link her channel in the description, and she's also the one who makes most of the thumbnails on the YouTube channel. So thank you very much, honey, for letting me use your account to test out. Now, her account has these 3 5-star weapons. Now, we have Memory of Dust R180, Lost Prayer R180, and Skyward Atlas R180. And also, her artifact quality with 4 Crimson and level 6 talents, C2, will decrease, it won't increase our damage output, which is good, because I want the damage to be relatively the same. She also has the relatively the same crit rate, crit damage. I had 64, 140. She has 62, 140. Her recharge is 113, mine is 111, and our pyro damage is the same. So this is relatively equal on the comparison. So let's go check it out. We have Memory of Dust. So scoring hits on an opponent increases attack by 4% for 8 seconds, maximum 5 stacks. So I am not going to be, well, I think I might be able to get 5 stacks of this because I'll be autoing with her. So we'll see. Okay, it looks like I am going to have 5 stacks. So we'll see how much damage this does. Okay, so charge attack does 8k. 8,000, 10,000 flat, 10.8. The auto does 3.4. All right, so now that given that we're testing Memory of Dust, I'm gonna go ahead and add a neutral shield to the party. I cannot add Zhongli to the party because his shield reduces elemental resistance. So we're going to just add in Noelle. All right, so Noelle will be our shielder for this to test out Memory of Dust with max stacks and a shield on and see how much the damage increase is. Shield on. Up. So 10k. 9k. I did not crit there. And then the auto is 3.5 still. Alrighty. That was Memory of Dust with the raw stat of 1.85k attack. Let's switch over to Skyward Atlas. So Skyward Atlas has way higher base attack, has also attack percent, and increases elemental damage bonus by 12%. You also have this passive, but we're not going to pay attention to this passive because it is just view it as extra damage from her. So we're going to be taking a look. So we have about the same amount of attack. We're still maintaining 62, 140, but 12% more pyro damage bonus. So the damage I should be seeing here should be slightly less than Memory of Dust, because Memory of Dust grants you attack percent steroid. Okay. 7.8. Did not crit. 10.5. So it is about what I would expect. So Skyward Atlas Q damage at 10.5k, which is slightly lower than the Memory of Dust, even with Memory of Dust max stacks. The charge attack did about 7.8k. So I can see that the E would do about 9.6k. And then the auto would probably be expected to do about 3.1k. So that should be the relative damage numbers for Skyward Atlas, which is slightly weaker than Memory of Dust. We can also test the passive of Skyward Atlas here. And then how much does the passive do? 7.5k. So it's about half of Crossbear, which I think is expected. All right, and the final weapon is Lost Prayer. So the complicated thing about Lost Prayer is that it depends on the amount of time that you're on the field. I'm going to be on the field for a significant amount of time, so you're going to see max amount of damage from Lost Prayer. With this particular build, I have 92 crit rate, so I'm going to switch over to a crit damage mask here. And with this, we have 68.6 and 175. So hopefully we crit. Obviously, if you were going for I'm just doing this to provide more of a balanced view, right? Since this weapon gives crit rate, I should be opting for a crit damage mask. So we have much less attack, 1.5k attack, but we have 70 crit and 175 crit damage, and this will slowly increase over time. Okay, so charge attack, 8k. E did not crit. 3.4k auto, did not crit either. Crit. My E does around 10k, and my Q is 10.7 with max stacks. All right, so that wraps up the 5-star weapon test between these 5-star weapons. Quick note, I'm just going to go over them very briefly since they're all relatively similar. Memory of Dust, Skyward Atlas, and Lost Prayer are all very similar in terms of damage. Lost Prayer was doing 10k on E and about 11k on Q. The current build, Skyward Atlas was slightly below, but Skyward Atlas is attack percent based, so I didn't have any crit damage boosts there. Memory of Dust ekes out on top if you maximize all of its passive. So that is a testament to depending on the crit damage and attack percent ratio that you have, but they're all going to be relatively similar. So given that Yanfei does synergize well with shield, as do most characters, it would not be a bad stat stick to put on her. So yeah, keep that in mind. All these weapons are very strong. You can't complain with any of the 5 stars. They're all about 10% stronger than the 4-star counterparts. There's that. Now, let's talk about artifact sets really quick. So we have 3 or 4 choices here. 4 Crimson and 4 Wanderers are the 2 highest tier sets that I would place that are viable for her. They both perform about the same. Just depends on which ones has better substats. So 4 Crimson is a pure pyro build, and she's a catalyst user, so this synergizes very well. She can use the maximum 4-set piece, gets her ease on a 9-second cooldown. Also gives her 15% vaporize and melt damage, which is really strong. 4 Wanderer synergizes with her passive here, because this additional damage counts as charge attack damage. So Wanderers there, benefits. And Wanderers in general, since all of her damage comes from mostly her charge attack damage, does benefit quite a bit. Now, 2 sets, 2 Crimson, 2 Gladiator, 2 Noblesse. All of these are mix and matchable. I would say that 2 Wanderers is not really viable for a mix and match. It's relatively weak. If you run Wanderers, you definitely are going for the 4 set. So 2 Glad, 2 Noblesse, 2 Crimson, all viable. And then eventually when you guys get up to the 4 set, 4 Crimson or 4 Wanderers. As for main stats, I would recommend attack percent, pyro damage, and crit rate. So I think that her crit rate can be much higher than other characters due to her passive, so I would take that into account when you're building her. Can run Elemental Mastery on this piece, but I would go for attack percent first and then have Elemental Mastery on these substats. All right, very quickly, compositions. Heavy offensive synergies. We have the Vaporize and Melt enablers. Mona, Xingqiu, Rosaria, Changyan are all okay. I think Changyan is probably the worst of these synergies because of his close range, but he has very high burst damage. So there's that. Bennett, very solid healer. Sucrose is a nuke enabler, which I will probably demonstrate. Overload comps. Fischl, very strong. C6 especially. Beidou, taser comp. This also works very well. The same way that Tartak would build around Fischl and Beidou, you can also do that with Yanfei. Diona, Zhongli, the shielders of the group. Very high synergy, very high protectability, survivability. Would always use. I think that if I were to choose a set of units to run, Xingqiu would be number 1, but I think that's very obvious. And then Bennett would also be number 1. So these 3 paired together, and then the last piece is just extra. You can run both a Melt Vaporize, add in Fischl there for additional damage. These are all viable. Zhongli is also viable in that comp. Yanfei, Pyro main DPS. Try to maximize Vaporize and Melt damage. If you don't want to run that, Overload is also viable, and then Shielders are very good. So that is her comp building. All right. So let's demonstrate some comps here. I'm going to be using a Witset, and hopefully we can do some nuke showcases and then also some Spiral Abyss showcases. The Spiral Abyss showcases that I will be doing are on the old Abyss. So when this video comes out, the Abyss will already be swapped, but it should be a good demonstration. Hope you guys enjoy. I think that should wrap up this entire complete guide. You just saw the comp demonstrations. We did 2 new comps. We did some Abyss comps with Zhongli and just 4-star units. So the synergies between all those. So I hope you guys have a pretty good idea of Yanfei as a whole. Just to recap, we cover all the weapons. So covered 9 4-star weapons. Also covered 3 5-star weapons on my girlfriend's account. We went over artifact sets. We went over compositions. And then we had a comp demonstration. Also went over the constellations and the talents as well. So I hope you guys enjoyed. This will wrap up the complete guide to Yanfei. Thank you guys very much for watching. If you guys stayed through the whole way, I will see you guys on the next video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and take care.